So I finished Crescent City, the first book, House of Earth and Blood, and this is gonna be my 4 out of 5 star review. So while I enjoyed the last 230 pages of this book, it did take 570 pages for this book to get good, and that's a long time. And I understand there is a lot of people that are like, well, I could get to it right away. And I did make a list of where my intrigue peaked because there was quite a few times where my intrigue peaked and it kept me reading the book because I wanted to find out more about this world. But there was a lot of dull moments and there was a lot of expo dumping, and I've mentioned this before in my Crescent City updates where I don't see how she could do this any other way unless she did this into like an 8 part book series where she taught you all the different things about this world, all the different elements and magical elements in a natural way, and she showed you how the world works, like through various different scenes and scenarios, and that would take a lot longer than this, which was full of expo dumping. But I don't know, I think I would rather take the 8 book series that than an expo dumping book like this because it's a lot. It's a lot. Did I have fun? Yes. Did I enjoy those last 230 pages? Yes. They were really, really good. Those last 230 pages made this worth a read, and that's why I made it a 4 out of 5. And I loved Hunt and Bryce's relationships. Hunt and Bryce's relationships was perfect. They were perfect. Bryce as the main character, badass. Badass. Perfect. If you are going to read this book, read it specifically for Bryce. But if you're going to read it for the plot, it takes 570 pages for the plot to get resolved. So if you like long books and science fiction books where the red rum takes a while to get solved, then this is the book for you. It is, for me, it took 570 pages for this book to get good. There were moments where I was like, yes, this is interesting, this is good, but there was a lot of like flatline moments, peak, flatline moment, peak, flatline moment, peak. And I I wanted to love this all throughout because a lot of the story elements were pretty cool, but if you have seen my updates of book, this book reminded me a lot of Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I hated that book. So for the first 200 pages of this book, I was trying. I was pushing through it because I was trusting all my followers that were like, please keep going, please keep going, please, it gets better, it gets better, it gets better. And usually when you guys tell me it gets better, it does get better. There have only been a few times where I'm just like, it didn't get better. But for the most part, you guys are always right. So I did finish this, and then 500, 570 pages in, I was like, okay, I see what everybody's talking about. And those last 130 pages were where it really was at, because those last 130 pages were crazy to me. A lot happened in those last 130 pages. Those last 130 pages had me crying on the plane. I look like a madman crying. How those there's one scene in particular that had me very emotional, and I'm gonna miss. Yeah. I'm gonna keep reading this series, also because I pre-ordered the third book, but I have the second book. I'm gonna read that one. I am going to try to read Mistborn before I read um, House of Sky and Breath, and I'm gonna get into 3 other books. I'm trying to read Stuffed, Double Stuffed, and Goat Girl. I'm also trying to read Chaos Wielder, and I'm trying to finish the Chaos Wielder before the end of the year. So hopefully I can get to the second book by the end of this year, and hopefully I can just push through those books so that I can get to the second book. But if not, I'm probably gonna read House of Sky and Breath at the beginning of next year because I do want to know what happens to Bryce. I'm From now on, I'm in this story for Bryce, and that was why I finished this book. I would not have finished the book if the main character was insufferable, because if the main character was insufferable, I would not have continued the series. But Bryce was the only thing keeping me reading this book. Like 100%, Bryce was the only thing. Anytime there'd be any other character, I'd be like, oh, where's Bryce? Give me Bryce. I want Bryce's story. Basically, and I forgot to mention this, what this book is about is a girl's best friend gets unalived and she has to find who did the red rum. Simple plot. Um, what happens in chapter 5 is where the red rum happens, and then you don't deal with it until page like 670. So it does take a minute to get into this book, and like everybody says on TikTok, it takes a while for certain people. They have certain areas where they got into it right away, and some people were like they took a little bit longer like me, and some people found it in certain areas. So this book is very subjective, because some people are like, oh yeah, from the very first page, or some people are like, oh, it took me a long time, but once I got into it, I started to love it. And that was me. And then there's certain people who are like, yeah, this I don't think I'm gonna pick this book back up. And I can very much understand that, because this is one of those books where it's very hard to get through. I'm not even gonna lie. The thing that got me through it was one particular storyline that I could see there was a thread that was going through, and that was Bryce. And the entire time they were throwing crumbs for like Bryce's storyline and Bryce's abilities, and I was like, I know this is the thread that I have to follow. So then that was the only thing keeping me going, because everything else I was like, I don't care. I don't care. I would eventually do a reread, because this definitely feels like a video game that you have to play twice to completely understand, and to see where all the Easter eggs were and where all the hints were, and to be like, oh, that's what that scene meant. So I think this is a reread that I'm gonna eventually do, and I'll probably do it the reread once they have the graphic audio, because they are releasing this on graphic audio. So then once they release this on graphic audio, I'll probably either borrow it or buy it and then just do a reread. Or if I'm feeling very, very ambitious, then one day I'm going to do a reread. But this is a long one. This is 800 pages. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of hours. Have a good day, guys.